Hello, everyone. I'm David Morris, publisher of Lake Drive Books, where we publish books that help you heal, grow, and discover. And I am delighted today to be joined by Melissa Duge Spiers, who is the author of our book, forthcoming book, Holy Disobedience, Sex, Sin, and Secrets in the Biggest Church No One Knows. I got that right.
You look at you. I need to
Yeah.
practice that, a little
Yeah.
faster.
Yeah. Yeah. How are you doing today, Melissa?
I am doing well, thank you.
Great to be having just a few minutes here to talk about the book, why you wrote the book, what you're hoping people will get out of it. I've got some good juicy questions geared up for you. So just let's just have some fun here. But first, can you just give a little bit to those viewing about yourself?
Sure. I am a fourth generation Seventh-day Adventist. We do call that the biggest church no one knows for a reason because it has flown under the radar forever, even though it is an enormous fundamentalist Christian organization. They are bigger than the Mormons, bigger than the SBC, and my family was in it, has been in it for 4 generations, and I escaped at 18 and continued to drag the religious trauma from it through the next few decades of my life. And Holy
Okay.
Disobedience is my escape from that, finally processing and deconstructing much after leaving.
Yeah, yeah, well put. What do you do for your day job? You're a mom for one thing. Not that
I
that's
am
a
a mom, and I am also a freelance writer. I do magazine articles, Huffington Post, all that kind of stuff. But I also am a vintage fashion reseller.
yes.
I've been collecting vintage fashion since I was 12. So my entire closet, plus I have to say, one of my children's closets is full of vintage stuff, and so that's what you see me wearing all the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you really get to know Melissa, you'll find out where you have some stuff that people can find. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Curated vintage. You also said that Seventh-day Adventist Church is biggest church. It's bigger than SBC, bigger than I forgot what else the other one that you said,
The
but
Mormons,
Mormons,
actually
yeah.
worldwide, larger than the Mormons.
Right. So you're saying that in terms of globally.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important distinction. Like there's a seven Adventist universities overseas that which and you went to one, didn't you?
Absolutely, in nearly every country, not every country, and certainly every continent,
Mhm.
and, they have the 4th or 5th largest. I'm never quite it all the statistics always change, but they are always in the top 10 list of the richest churches in the world. Usually, they follow, like, 2 or 3 different sections of the Catholic Church and the Mormons, and they're, in the top 10 richest.
Oh,
They have the 4th or 5th largest, education system in the world. They have the 4th or 5th largest healthcare system in the world. They have an enormous healthcare system called Advent Health, a very well-known, world-renowned, medical school, Loma Linda. And even in spite of all of that, they have politicians, Ben Carson,
yep.
they have ex-celebrities like Prince and, oh gosh, I can't remember any more of them off the
Yep.
top of my head. Oh,
They'll
Usain
come back.
Bolt.
Yeah.
But, and nobody still knows who they are or what they're all
Yeah.
about. They really I believe it's very calculated. They like to stay under the radar.
Yeah.
Um, and part of what we'll talk about with my book is the fact that they have a sex abuse problem of clergy, etc., that is, in my opinion, equal to the Catholics and the
Right.
SBC.
Right.
But they are one of the few large churches who has never been publicly called to account for it
Right.
yet.
Right.
So, yet
Yes.
is important for us.
Yes. There was a very big, I think in the New York Archdiocese, there was big news just this past week about a
Yes.
$300 million award, I
Yes.
believe,
I
to
saw
a
that. Yeah.
thousand a thousand plaintiffs.
Yep.
Yep. It's really and in a way I've heard it said that on the Catholic side of things, it's easier to uh, discover or to create structure as survivors and as
Yeah.
knowing which party to go after. Like in the
Yes.
Southern Baptist world, they're much more. There's a denomination that overarches everything, but the churches themselves are independent of each other, so it's not as easy to,
Yeah.
consolidate a lawsuit.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about your book. So, this is a book that you've been working on for a while.
Yeah.
You've shown it to a bunch of folks. You've even won a unpublished manuscript award, I believe,
Yeah, I
for Holy
did.
Disobedience.
Yep.
Tell me more about what was your inspiration for writing
For
Holy
writing
Disobedience?
it. Well, obviously because I am a writer and what else they always say write what you know, right? So
Mhm.
memoir is
Mm.
where you start. But I started writing it about 20 years ago because I had left the church at 18 and I had just sailed onward into life. There are a lot of people who leave high control religions and have a hard time integrating, but I think my personality plus my youth helped me just go on. I went to public university, or not public, but secular private university. And so I just integrated fairly seamlessly into real life, the world, and thought I was just cured. Healing equaled, or leaving equaled healing. And trotted on my merry way. And then in midlife, like my late 30s, I guess, I found out that a very dear family member of mine, whom I had intensely admired, whom everyone in the Adventist Church had intensely admired, had been a serial child predator in his role working for the church, and the church had covered up for him over and over again. The classic high control religion move where they just shame the victim, move the perpetrator, and it happens again and again, right? Um, and I stumbled on it was actually a very freak coincidence, but I made the acquaintance of one of the I think it's maybe the first victim, but you never know that with these things.
Mhm.
And she and I became very good friends, and um, she was instrumental in telling me, like, you are not deconstructed. You have not done any work in healing and uncovering. You need to look at your family. You need to look at yourself. You need to look at the church. And at the time, I was not receptive to that message, but I started writing the book anyway. And I thought it was going to be a story about what I'd found out about my family and the church. And then over the years and more arc of my life, uh, and continuing friendship with her, it became clear that I really needed to revisit all of those things that she said. And so I started deconstructing maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And that's when I really started working on the book because I realized it wasn't the story about that out there, my
Right,
family, the church. It was about this in here and how all of that had formed me and how I had just literally, like a dog with a stick, like drug all of that horrible trauma with me
right,
um, through life, and it had not been a healthy existence.
right. Yeah, you said initially in your answer to me about why did you write the book? What was the inspiration for it? You said you used that phrase in writing and publishing, write what you know. But
Yeah.
it's also people also use an equally or an equivalent phrase, write what you want to know,
Well,
and
that's
and
it.
and that's it. In your case, you wanted to figure out who you were
Yeah. Yeah.
or where you were going
Yep.
by putting it into words, and in good memoir writing, which yours is, it's also a universal human story where
Yeah.
readers who've gone through similar experiences can see themselves and what they want to learn about themselves as well. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that, and it is you start thinking, "Oh, I'll write what I know," and you realize you don't really know, like, yourself is one of the biggest
Mm.
mysteries in the world, and so as you write, oh boy, the layers and everything, and I do think there's so much universal in all of our stories, and, getting down to that nugget of what makes us all kind of tick and our fears and is all quite similar. So
Mhm.
finding the universal in your own story obviously is a sweet spot.
So talk about some of what happens in the
Some of
book.
what happens.
And maybe just start early with, like, early life, like, it was a very controlling system that you were brought up in.
Yes, yeah. So the Adventist Church absolutely hates to be called a cult, but they are a cult. Everyone always thinks of a cult as like a compound, right? And but
Mhm.
it the church hits every single one of the bite model behavior, information control, thought control, etc. It it The Adventist Church has a prophet. She was Victorian times, and so it's extremely high control according to the prophet's writings, etc. And so I can just give a tick off list of, we were raised, well, I was homeschooled, which is quite typical for Adventists. We were raised, I was homeschooled until about fourth grade. But you go to Adventist schools, Adventists are vegetarian, you can't have spices or um, caffeine, coffee, because the prophet said that all of those things inflame the sexual senses, and it's a very purity culture based organization. Obviously, they're very anti-gay, anti-sex in general before marriage. We also were not allowed to have a television, go to movies, go to the bowling alley. We were not allowed to dance. You couldn't listen to secular music and even religious music that had a drum beat, because that was from the
Yep.
devil. And so,
Appearance was also for you growing up in
yeah.
particular. Mhm.
Yes, and that is
Or
a big
or
cult thing I have learned, again,
the
is
young girls.
appearance control,
Mhm.
and the Adventist Church had a lot of like our Adventist Academy had a major handbook, which was mostly focused on the girls, but also the boys in terms of what we could wear, what we could, no makeup, no fingernail polish, no jewelry, blah, 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 no jeans, and then our family a super extra layer on that of our hair had to be a certain way. My sister and I had to, we were actually forced to wear makeup early, but not too much makeup, which I find is one of those funny things about high control religion in my experience, is how much is rules that you have to kind of tread the line of those rules without knowing exactly what they are, because they
Right.
shift and there's no absolute definition. So there was a lot of that going on with our looks. We had to be skinny. We had to um, always be perfect.
Yes. So, I think a lot of folks watching this might, already be right here with us, and they know exactly what they have had similar experiences, or
Yeah,
they know
yeah,
of them. Um, what do you think for you, as a human being, as a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 22-year-old, when did things start shifting in Melissa? When did you start saying, "I'm not this," and
yeah.
what happened?
There were a couple of steps of it. I tend to wonder if I ever actually believed the whole hook, line, and sinker. I was a very strong personality as a kid. I was the strong-willed child, and I fought back against it a lot in the beginning until my will was broken. Um, and I always questioned the super behavior control. Like, why would God not let me swim on Saturdays? Why would God not let me uh, drink a Coke when everybody else got to have Coke? It didn't make sense to me. If there was a God, a supposedly loving God, why he wanted my life to be so miserable. And that kind of came to a head when I was about 10, because I was a competitive gymnast. And when you get to a certain level of competition, the coaches don't want to spend any time training you if you're not going to compete for them. And all of the competitions were on Saturday. And Adventists have extreme, like, you are not allowed, no exceptions. You do nothing from sundown Friday to sundown
Right.
Saturday except
Right.
worship God. And so I was a has-been in my, like, dearest, most beloved thing ever by the age of 10, because I wasn't allowed to do it. And that was the first big breaking point where I was just like, if it's God who's saying that, well, he's really mean, and I'm not gonna play with him.
Yeah.
And if it's the church, well, then I'm out as soon as I can, that just it was just a I don't know that I even had to think about it. It was just a
Right.
gut feeling. And then when I was a teenager was when the final nail in the coffin with purity culture. And of course, we didn't call it purity culture back then, but that's what it was.
Right.
And I just realized how fear based, just absolutely fear based, my entire upbringing was, particularly the teachers and my parents, and it just all kind of coalesced into what are they so scared of? Why do they have to control me so tightly? Why do they have to micromanage absolutely everything about us, particularly sex and things with the world? Like, what are we going to find out that they don't want us to know? And so I went looking. And from there on, the house of cards just fell.
Right. The house of cards fell not just for sort of a belief system for you, but even for your own sense of self.
Yeah.
Your life, there was a lot of chaos that
Yeah.
ensued.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that you come to know about people who are overcoming spiritual abuse, religious abuse, and the trauma that comes from it is that there's just no, like, just leaving the situation doesn't change things. and
Right.
and even as you try to excise yourself, you have an exorcism to go through. To It's not going to be pretty.
Yes.
It's not going to
Yes.
be easy. I'm going to kind of fast forward a little bit here
Okay.
and read what I think is probably one of the most amazing sentences in your book,
Oh.
which I'm a little hesitant to say because I don't want to give anything away, but I think it will definitely intrigue people. You write, I don't remember which page it's on, but it'll come back to you what this is. You wrote, I could beat them at their own game. All those early controllers of every inch of my body and mind. I could make a fetish out of letting people hurt me more than they ever could. Is that ringing a bell?
Yeah, of course.
Yep. So,
Yes.
I had so smugly, wittily co-opted that servile biblical woman into something deviant and dark, wickedly sexual, and I could do it bigger and better. I could get an A plus. I could overachieve. Watch me go. What does that mean? What does all that mean?
Well, I don't wanna give too much away, but, I certainly the purity culture was what I fought back hardest against in all the rules, and so I went diving off the deep end when I decided to leave the church, and I thought I was being so subversive in turning the purity culture on its head by going for the deepest, darkest, most transgressive sex I could go for. And it could just mean nothing. They had said it meant everything to my life. As a woman, if I didn't have my virginity and this and that, I
Right.
was worthless. And the used shirt and the chewed gum and the licked cupcake and all of that. And so I thought, okay, just watch me go. Watch me turn this into something so bad you just wouldn't even believe, and look, I'm still here, and your stupid rules mean nothing. And so they had taken sex so far away from us and depersonalized it that
Mhm.
it was never personal for me, so I made it violent and dirty and this and that. And so I went through through several successive long-term relationships and or marriages, um believing that was my sign of having really, triumphed over this religion and this control, and so then in the end, the deconstruction of the religious piece involved that piece as well, realizing that I had never left the submission mindset, the, um, just no boundaries, the obedience to men, the absolute belief that everyone and anyone had authority over me. Um,
Mhm.
and I had translated that to a large extent into the sexual, but it was pretty widespread in my life, and so, and I think that's one of the universal things in it is people may not identify with my method of going deeply into the transgressive sexual to defy all of that, but I think all of us coming out of high control religions, we need to deconstruct ourselves along with deconstructing the religion. It's not just like, is there a God or is there not a God? It's how did all their rules mess me up?
And
And
I think,
how did
yep.
I take it into my secular life?
And going forward is it's nothing but messy. I mean, there is no like healthy way, people talk about deconstruction, but then some are quick to say, well, what about reconstruction? Well,
Yeah,
you just, I wouldn't even use the word, I don't even try to use the word reconstruction. I just don't know that it's actually
yeah,
a sound way of talking about it.
yeah,
I am a little intrigued about your phrase that you saw some of these relationships and the way things went in the relationships, the behavior that went on as a sign of defiance, of you having broken from, of you having
right.
changed. And but you just now are reflecting back going, well, yeah, that might be true, but it also came with a lot of other even probably had resulted in some of its own trauma as well.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think maybe the task in our world right now is to be able to figure out how can we be defiant in a way that is is, you know, adding to our lives,
right,
how what signs of defiance can we find that
right.
are healthful, healthy and help develop us as human
Yeah,
beings.
yeah.
And
Healthy defiance,
that's
I like
hard.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy disobedience, like
Yeah.
it really, um, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I just want to touch on a couple other little things, and then we can wrap up with maybe a big question.
Okay.
Um, but you talk about how you were auditioning. I just love this part. You were auditioning for acting roles. You were living in
Mhm.
New York City for a while, and you have a realization in the book that maybe you weren't all that great at it at first, and you
Yes.
had a good little theory, a little observation as to why. Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, absolutely. It actually was one of the bigger breakthroughs in terms of or one of many, I guess, in terms of realizing my, uh, inability to access my own emotions. Like, I
Right.
realized that I was a terrible actor, and I knew it, and I could see it, but I just thought, "Oh, that's, I'm just not good." And I didn't realize until, of course, again, when I was tearing myself apart years and
Right.
years later, that I had become so practiced because the only acceptable emotions for us growing up were the happy, the pleasing, we were not allowed to express any bad emotions ever. The prophet Ellen White said that even one unhappy child would prevent everyone in heaven from being okay. And my
Right.
family was even worse on that. My mother would literally beat me if I were unhappy in any way. So, I had no access to any authentic emotions because, of course, the happy emotions generally weren't authentic either. They were just pasted on. And so I could really imitate what I thought was acting, um, but I couldn't access my emotions
Yes.
for
Yeah.
any.
I think that's absolutely fascinating. I think that's just absolutely fascinating is, you have like if you're an aspiring actor, I hope you didn't grow up evangelical because you've got some work to do. I mean, it explains a lot. I mean, it
Mhm,
also explains like one of the other stories that really captured my imagination was were actually working for a Kennedy
mhm.
uh political team
Yes.
in doing PR or what
Yeah.
have you. You had some really good stories there. But the one that struck me the most was how I think you ended up spending the night at one of the Kennedy.
Mhm.
daughter's or niece's apartment in
Yeah.
Manhattan, and you got up the next morning and you spent, like, I think, like, over an hour getting
Yeah.
yourself all ready, dressed up,
Mhm.
makeup, hair,
Yep.
clothes, fancy clothes, and you walk out and there's um, all these Kennedy types. I won't try to describe them. I won't use the derogatory words that are coming to mind, but or just, the sort of, like, people who grew up with privilege and were very comfortable with it, and they were there in their frumpy pajamas smoking cigarettes, and you just felt so awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Yeah.
was a real, because that was my first encounter with the real world, basically, kids my age that were not Adventist. And so it was a very strange, to go from, I mean, you couldn't have
Yep.
any more contrast than that. And, yeah, I had we had a fundraiser overnight, and we won't spoil because there's some fun stories in there that'll go in the book, but, and so instead of going all the way to where I lived 2 hours away, I stayed with Rory Kennedy, who was, Bobby Kennedy's, not the Bobby Kennedy everybody knows now, the original Bobby Kennedy, his youngest daughter, who's exactly my age, and, so I got to stay in her apartment, which was just, I was so excited, I thought I'd make a
Yeah. Yeah.
friend, and,
Yeah.
and bless her, she was a lovely person and so gracious, especially for whatever we were, 16, 17-year-old. But, yeah, I got all gussied up, full face makeup, the 80s hair everywhere and the polyester suit that I was wearing or whatever, and I came out my
Yeah.
bedroom door, and there were these prep school girls because she had several roommates, and they were just
Prep
like,
school girls.
wrinkled t-shirts and just smoking with a cup of coffee, neither of which things I'd ever done in my entire life.
Yeah.
And, and they were just, I mean, we all just stared at each other, and it was the most awkward, weird moment.
It was just so telling of how in religious conservative worlds we objectify the outside world as
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
but it also means we don't even know the first thing about being inside of it.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
Um, and if that outside world is something we want to bring into our world, how do we even converse
Yeah,
if
yeah,
we can't see it?
totally.
Let's wrap up with kind of a big question, but it really gets to what you're hoping people will get out of the book.
Huh?
So what does religious trauma look like decades later once you've escaped? We've kind of talked around this a little bit.
Ooh, yeah. Um, I really hate the overused word healing.
Mm.
So I think religious trauma decades later involves trying to unify your pieces in a cohesive and whole. There's a better word than whole. Um, But religious trauma is just so people talk about the CPTSD of it, and it's really true. It is complex trauma of just like the biggest complexity because it is just everywhere, all over in your DNA, basically, when we've been in multiple generations. So, I I think for me, I've had to define what I want to heal, what I want to overcome, what the most, because religious trauma is so much and so big for a lot of us that I could take 3 or 4 lifetimes and never heal from all of it.
Well
So
said.
what
Mm.
do I want that's going to give me from now until the end, um, a richly layered, free of that system life? And you have to pick and choose, and I tell people there are 2 columns, and there's how were you hurt the most, and start at the top of that list and start working on that, and then what were the fun things that they took away from you, and start at the top of that and work down that list, and, for me, obviously, it was the purity culture and submission thing that they did to me that was the worst, and then over in the column of what did they take away from me, I've pretty much done all that. And it is a lot of fun.
It is. That's a great, great answer to end on. Thank you so much. Wow. Yeah, I really encourage folks to read Holy Disobedience by Melissa Duge Spiers. It's packed full of a lot of stories, which we didn't even come close to talking about. And it's a page turner, and it's what great reading is about. But it's also about how we transcend ourselves and the worlds that we were brought up in, and it is possible. But like you say, it's like you pick and choose what you're able to go after. That's really good. I like that a lot. I'm going to remember that one. So where can people find you online
Ooh,
to learn
okay.
more about you?
So I am on TikTok and Instagram as The Glory Hole, WHOLE. Don't forget that W because you'll end up in places you don't want to be. I am on Substack as just my author name, Melissa Duge Spiers. And you can find me on my publisher's website.
There you go. LakeDriveBooks.com.
Yep.
Definitely go check out the book. Thanks so much, Melissa.
Thank you.